Ever since I can remember, I've had a fascination with the paranormal. It began with a childhood discovery of all those ghost caught on tape videos, which were a dime a dozen in the early years of YouTube. And as I grew into my teenage years, the misty wonderment began to clear. The longer you have an interest in the supernatural, the more you realise that the majority of people claiming to have really seen something are full of bullshit. With the terrible ghost hunting shows like Most Haunted, and increasingly realistic special effects muddying the waters. Even saying that you were open to the idea of the supernatural carried heavy judgment from your peers. And now, in 2023, with AI technology allowing you to create false photorealistic depictions of anything, and online ghost hunting awash with clickbait thumbnails and cheap screamers, is there, or was there ever, any shred of truth to our local supernatural legends? As much as I am heavily skeptical of supernatural phenomena nowadays, I do, and always have, just really wanted to believe that tales of the paranormal were tapping into something truly scientific, something that we just don't have the technology to comprehend yet. In recent years, I've become an avid follower of several YouTubers who take an objective approach when covering these topics. Shrouded Hand and Curious World are the two main channels which have inspired this project. And so my journey begins with a very strange and relatively recent urban legend from the south of England. I first became familiar with the legend of the Southend Ratman when it was mentioned in Dee Gordon's book, Haunted Southend. It instantly stood out to me because, unlike most ghost stories, it takes place in a relatively modern location. The Southend Queensway Underpass was constructed in the 1970s. Now, the story has two main versions, with the first being the most plausible, and you'll see why I make that remark. So, one freezing winter's night, a homeless man took refuge in the underpass. Huddled in his tattered sleeping bag, he suddenly became aware of a group of drunk youths approaching, on their way home from the pub. They began to attack him, kicking him to near death before dumping his battered body onto the cold floor of the subway. Slowly bleeding out in that icy tunnel, the rats which inhabit it began to gather and consume him, eating at his flesh all the way down to the bone. It is said that if you pass through the tunnel, you will hear strange scratching, squeaking, and even catch a sight of the apparition who has an exposed skull, or, depending on the version, the face of a rat. I'll briefly touch on the other version of the story, which has a real fantastical schoolyard quality to it. The wife of the mayor of Southend reportedly gave birth to a deformed child with a rat-like face. And, to save himself from public humiliation, the mayor reportedly built an underground tunnel network to house his abominable offspring. Therefore, in this version of the tale, the rat man is not a ghost, but rather a real person, as the tunnel was supposed to link to the Queensway Underpass. Now, something that struck me as odd about this tale from the very beginning is the fact that the story is pretty much the same on any website you read it on. It has the two versions and they're worded pretty similarly. So I decided to do a little digging, and while doing that, I discovered that the story only first appears in 2005. And on top of that, it doesn't appear on a local Southend forum or, something casual like a Facebook page or Twitter account. No, it appears on the Spin Pasta wiki, and a Spin Pasta, if you don't know, is a spin-off of a creepypasta, which is a fictional online creepy tale. And for it to first pop up here raises my suspicions, because every subsequent post about it on the internet is somehow relating to this initial article. So, as you can imagine, I became very skeptical at this point. However, I did stumble across a couple of first-hand accounts that are from before this 2005 period. However, the posts themselves are after that period and are far more recent. It's just that they talk about events that, happened when this person was growing up, or there's a post on the Reddit No Sleep forum that dates an encounter as being in 2002. However, No Sleep, if you're not familiar with it, has this rule that you must treat everything as fact, even if you are making up a fictional story, which I would assume most, if not all of them are. However, D. Gordon's Haunted Southend does have a different source for the story, and that is of an individual who, I assume, lived in Southend and talks about their own experiences, both first and second hand. So, with all that in mind, and with a healthy dose of skepticism, I decided it was time to check out the Underpass for myself. I'm now approaching the underpass, so let's see what happens. There's a kind of echoing effect as you walk through, and I have noticed this on previous occasions. I'm wondering if that is what people experience when they talk about hearing the footsteps and scratching. My feet kind of crunching on the floor. It's quieter now. Don't know if that was picked up, but something just squeaked. Don't know what it is about the echo chamber nature of this subway, but you just always feel like something's behind you, like something's creeping up on you. just heard voices and shot myself. I think it was just someone on the street. Do you keep hearing kind of scratching, itching kind of noises, but I really do think it's just a mix of the echoing and the squeaking of lorries going around the top. Don't know. Again, just keep thinking I hear people. Footsteps. Stinks of piss. And I think that's gonna conclude our investigation. Because I'm starting to see lots of sketchy people in hoodies, so I'm gonna go home. So, the investigation was interesting. You'll notice how I didn't use any of the traditional paranormal investigation equipment like an EMF meter or a ghost box. And quite simply, it's because I don't hold them in very high regard. They have absolutely no grounding in science, and they tend to provide enough random output for you to take whatever information you want from them. I went instead for a stripped back approach to paranormal investigation, and I intend to do this in future videos. This is an attempt to replicate how most supernatural accounts are reported. Anyway, one of the first things I mentioned when I arrived at the underpass was how the echoes in the tunnel gave the sense that somebody was walking close behind you at all times. It's nearly impossible to determine the location of some of the noises I heard, especially voices. The constant traffic and pedestrians skew any attempted accuracy with unusual sounds. There is one exception, however. When I heard that strange squeaking sound, the road was quiet, and it sounded as though it was just behind me. Strange, to be sure. But perhaps the most obvious possibility is that it was just a rat. Although, in a way I find this unlikely as well, because the underpass is very raised up, and so, unless there was some huge quantity of food, like a dying homeless man, I doubt that there are many rats there at any given time. Finally, the place certainly gives off a foreboding atmosphere, and the feeling that there is always someone or something in there with you. If I had to bet on the validity of this legend, I would say it's most likely it originated from that 2005 spin pasta before slowly spreading its way into paranormal pop culture. Whatever the true case, it is a creepy story, and just one of many reasons to avoid the Queensway Underpass. So with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.